All right, we are live. So let me make sure I get my Instagram going in a minute here. I don't know, Jonathan, do you have yours?
Yeah, I think I'm just waiting until it gives me the option to click go
Yeah,
live and then
there it
we'll be
goes.
on.
It's always a little delayed. All right, well, welcome everybody to the June 29th episode of Rough Cuts. It's been a minute since we've been on together. I think it's been like 6 weeks or something like that. I think generally speaking, the hobby is getting pretty pumped up about the upcoming national, and even though we're pretty lackadaisical about regular appearances on this thing, we're planning to get something in addition to this one before we hit the national. So we're not going to do any too much national talk today, but the plan is to talk about it in a few weeks here. Oh, we got a couple of good folks already in the chat. I see Pat Riley in. Hey, ahoy, Pat, what's up? We got Southern Collector Tony. We got Iowa Dave. It's getting big time in here. All right, so
Great group. Love it.
great group. Yep. All right. So we are Rough Cuts. I'm Matthew, 1956 Tops Guy. I am joined by my buddies. We got Nate at In Cardboard Veritas, and we've got Jonathan at sportscards.and sunsets. And we got a fun evening. Oh, we got Dan's Vintage joining us too. So we got a fun evening tonight. I think it's going to be a little bit shorter than our usual Kentucky windage, so we'll be a little bit on the. But we got a couple fun topics, so we're gonna start off with the classic one, which is we're about at the midpoint of the year here, hitting the end of June. So we thought we would do a little bit of a recap on favorite pickups from the first half of the year. I will interject with some more shout outs. We got, Dan's Vintage. We got Josh Schneiderman joining us. We got Sean Victory Investments, who just pumped out a pretty amazing children's book with Jackie Robinson that's pretty exciting. So we got a good group of folks in here tonight. So
Sean's welcoming us back out of retirement. I like it.
it wouldn't be Rough Cuts without a little gentle ribbing at the beginning about how infrequent these episodes are. So
That's
keep it
right.
up, gentlemen. So far, we haven't seen Chris Publius. He usually gives us the hardest time about that. I'm sure he'll join at some point, hopefully.
Yeah.
So we're going to do favorite pickups, and then we got a kind of a more longer discussion about kind of the state of eye appeal, the eye appeal movement at the moment right now in the hobby. And there's been a lot of discussion about this recently. Wanted to give a little shout out to Dan's vintage baseball PC with kind of bringing the term own appeal or my appeal into the hobby vernacular. So we're going to talk about that a little bit, and then we'll wrap up. So we got a pretty fun show, and maybe we can kick it off moving into favorite pickup of the first half of the year. Maybe we can lead it off with you, Nate. You wanna go?
Yeah, sure. I'll start off with a real quick amuse bouche here, which is
Oh, nice.
a Germany Schaefer E102 that I got in the mail recently that has some of the most honest corner wear you could ever
Look at
see.
that.
It's just, yeah, beautiful sunset image. Germany, is one of, I think, all of our favorites from the Glory of Their Times book. And I saw this one with that you know the cornerware is almost as pretty as the card itself.
So cool to have it raw too. Look at that. That
Yeah,
is
so
awesome.
nice
Those
little addition.
E102s, so cool. I love
Yeah,
that set.
Yeah.
nice. Thanks, man. Um, yeah, good addition for the Glory of Their Times project that I'm working on. But in terms of favorite pickups of the first 6 months of the year, I have a pretty clear candidate, and I'm sure you guys who helped me on the journey to picking this one up could guess it. But it's the N162 Goodwin
Ooh.
Champions King Kelly.
Oh
Um,
man, look at that. Look at that
yeah,
card.
Gorgeous.
hard to show it here too well, but yeah, it's a really nice looking PSA 2 example of this card, and it fits with project that I decided to do, a small project, but trying to get one Hall of Famer from each of the kind of what I consider at least to be the big four 19th century sets. So the Allen and Ginter, the Goodwin Champions, Old Judge, and Mayo's Cut Plug. Um, So continuing on the path with that, this is probably going to be the crown jewel in that little sub collection. I had to kind of think pretty long and hard about whether to go after this one or the Cap Anson, and ultimately decided that I wanted the Kelly to kind of be the sort of the main piece in this little collection, in large part because of who he was and the player he was. Also, I do want to have a Cap Anson in this sub collection, but I kind of didn't want it to be the centerpiece. Obviously, there's a lot of history with him, and being with his sort of racist views and promoting keeping black players out of the league and all that. And I think that's an important part of the history of the game, but I didn't want it to kind of be for him at least to be kind of the centerpiece of this collection. So my own personal choice there. But Kelly, the more I read about him, I thought was just a fascinating figure. He was one of the best players from the 19th century, and also just like a massive box appeal draw. Hugely charismatic guy, probably the most popular player from that time. His other nickname besides King was $10,000 Kelly, because the Chicago White Stockings sold him to the Boston Bean Eaters for $10,000, which is like an unheard of sum at the time. And a big part, the Bean Eaters, not the Bo side. And they're now the Braves. So that's like the whole Boston. They're not the predecessor to the Bo Sox, but. And a big, he was one of the best players, but also like he just sold out every stadium that he went to because he was such a kind of interesting and charismatic dude. So I really enjoyed reading up on him and seeing some of the quotes from his contemporaries. And then I thought this was, this set, I think is just one of the prettiest that was ever made. And this card is one of the key pieces in it. So yeah, pretty excited to grab this one.
I love it so much, Nate. The last card that I got that I shared on this show was the Glasscock from that set, which is gorgeous color too.
Yes.
More of a common. He was a great player, great shortstop,
yep.
But not like the Cap Anson or the King Kelly. And for the viewers, one thing interesting about this one is that card that Nate just showed was also the top card I was hunting at the time, and I almost bid on one the very next week. One of the other ones that Nate had been looking at. Came back to auction, and I was super, super close. It just felt like not the right time for me. But the one you got was so good, Nate. I remember you were wondering, did I overpay? Did I not?
Right.
And when I see it in hand, it's like, who cares what the last $500 was on it? I mean, that is just such a special card.
That was where I got to as well. I might have overpaid a 500 or 1,000 or something. I don't know, but I'm planning to have it for 20 or 30 years.
Exactly.
I think that's ultimately going to be. But yeah, of all the cards and all the hobby, Jonathan, it would have been pretty wild if you and I would have each gotten one of those in like the same week, which we were close to doing.
Totally.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Dan, I am showing a comment here. Dan's Vintage Baseball PC. I think rightly commenting that Glasscock should be in the Hall of Fame. Before Hannes Wagner came to the scene, I think Glasscock was the best shortstop that had ever played. So I agree with that.
Yeah, the one thing that I was thinking about too is like every time I see those cards, I'm always shocked at the color and the print quality, considering the age, right? I mean, it's kind of like I would have thought that they would have like cheapened out or like tried to like make the cards like put less work into it. So it's kind of shocking given, this card's a 19th century card and it has such amazing color. And the example that you have, Nate, it's shocking, right? It's crazy.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, it's an incredible, you're right. The print technology, the lithography, I guess, that they used then is pretty remarkable for how well, I guess we're at pushing 150 years, how well it's held up. The old Judge set used like actual photographs and then like pasted them on cardboard, and a lot of them have really faded a lot. Some of them to the point where it's kind of hard to even see the image. There are some that are really well preserved that I guess have been just like totally out of the light, but these lithographs seem to have stood the test of time a lot better in general.
Yeah, very nice. Very nice. Jonathan, you want to share yours?
Yeah, I do. So I've got a bit of a story here. First of all, someone who's in the audience tonight, Iowa Dave Sports Cards. He has a podcast, which is wonderful. If folks haven't heard it, it's The Shallow End. And so this year, after a job change in late 2024, I've been living in the Shallow End. And in fact, when we first talked about our best pickup of 2025. If I don't count things that I had shipped to myself from my vault, these before today, these were the only 2 sports cards I'd bought in 2025.
Oh wow.
The Bo Jackson Sports Illustrated for Kids I bought for $14. And this is a Flair Showcase Eddie George I bought for $4. So my income was a little lower after a job change than what I was used to. I needed to kind of make sure I could budget normal expenses for my family, and I really paused on buying. In fact, I even sold some cards that didn't really speak to me anymore. So I'd very much been on the sidelines, but also saving up for the National. I knew I like to go to the National. I love seeing cards in person and holding them and talking to people and buying. So before today, I was going to have to choose in this segment whether it was the Bo Jackson or the Eddie George. And by the way, I love these cards. I'm super excited to have them. The Bo Jackson, I probably would have picked. I have a raw binder project, and 1 page is devoted to the SI for Kids, the first year cards. But today, I made my first big acquisition of the year. And these guys they don't know which one I got, but Fanatics auction ended right when we went live. And there was a Hank Aaron rookie card that about a half hour ago, I had the leading bid on. It was owned previously by our friend Travis, Jackie's and Jordan's. And exceptional centering, it kind of 1 in 1,000 centering. And then there was another card, that was an SGC 4.5. There was another that hit my slabs that was a PSA 5.5, recently graded, and just had color that popped right off the screen. And for this particular card, color is my top attribute. And the guys and I were all week comparing and contrasting and going back and forth. And I was kind of deciding how I valued each card. And I had the leading bid on Fanatics until it crossed my reserve price. Interestingly, it closed 1 bid above. So I thought it might blow past because it was so well centered. It went 1 bid past mine. As soon as it did, I made an offer on the My Slabs copy, and this is mine, gentlemen. Man. This PSA 5.5. It's I'll talk about it more in the eye appeal segment, but this one for me, given the color, is this is the one I've been looking for. I used to own this card. I owned it in a PSA 4, bought it raw, got it graded. It was kind of dull. Ended up selling it to a friend at a show, but I knew that it wasn't my lifetime copy, and I've been looking for one for a couple of years. So as of about 35 minutes ago, guys,
wow.
I closed the deal for this one, and I happily have a Hank Aaron rookie back in the PC. So that's it.
Major congratulations, dude. That example is insane. I remember when we were talking about it in the chat, and it was like the color is just ridiculous on that card. And as you said, like, centering on that card, super tough. The centering on the example that you grabbed looks absolutely fantastic. But the color is so hard, right? You see a lot of like the faded orange, and that one is like in the blue, like that contrast between the blue in the hat and then the orange in the background and then the white on the borders. It's like, I can't wait to see that example, man. I hope it would be awesome if you brought it with you to Chicago, because I'd love to see it.
I'm gonna bring it.
Nice.
Awesome.
Dude,
I want you guys to see it.
Awesome.
Congrats, man. Yeah.
I agree. I'm kind of a color nerd, and the orange and the blue are complementary colors on the color wheel. The way they both just pop on that example. And I also just got to show this comment from Iowa Dave. He gives some props to the Bo Jackson, and
nice.
Well deserved.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, man, I agree. The color on the one you got looks just phenomenal. And I know this card has been one that's, really been toward the top of your list for a long time, been kind of elusive. And you were thinking of trying to get it in Chicago, but I think you made a great move when this one became available, not only just to get that card, but then also I feel like it kind of frees you up. You get a lot of work done on that show floor at the Nationals. Yeah. And I feel like you'd have been like laser focused on the Hank, and it might or might not have happened. It probably wouldn't have happened with a card as nice as the one you just got. And now you can kind of just be free there, I feel like.
That's in Atlantic City. I went with a mission 4 years ago now, and it was a little bit stressful. I accomplished the mission, but it was kind of too much to put on yourself. And now I get to go and just be open-minded. Yeah. And we've talked also about this card a lot, and a 5.5 for us, that's kind of getting towards higher grade, but it's a card where we talked about, like, I don't mind kind of going a little bit more higher grade in a card that feels so affordable for the significance.
Yeah, exactly. It's such, when we did our golden era ranking episode, right? That was one where it was like, obviously the Hank Aaron rookie is going to be on there. I forget if it might have been number 3, actually, if I remember right.
Yeah, I was trying to
Yeah.
remember
3
3
or
or 4.
4.
I think it was the Mantle, the Jackie, and then the Hank. I think
it was. Nate, I remember that was one that you were really pushing on, and it makes perfect sense.
I do. I push hard on that card. I love it. It's so
Love it.
And Jonathan, yeah, what you said is the same thing I did. I think for us, for that card, a 5.5 is really high grade. I mean, I know a lot of people collect high grade, but we tend to very rarely stray with a card like that above like a 4, 4.5. I feel
Totally.
like. Yeah. But I have a 5.5 as well. And it was, the same thing. I just like, it's affordable for what it is and how important it is. And to get the one, like if I could have found a 3.5 or a 4 that I was that happy with, I would have been all right with it too. But I was okay spending a little more and going a little high. I think a lot of times we almost feel like it's kind of cheating a little bit to get a higher grade like that, right? Like we want to be able to find one in a 2 or a 3 that we like enough.
Yeah.
But I think with this one, we were all right cheating.
And I think, if I remember right, that the example that you grabbed has a nice rough cut on the left edge. If I remember right.
It's really, really rough on that left side. Yeah.
Perfection. Love it. Awesome.
Matthew, bring us home.
All right, yeah. Let me get my stuff sorted out here. All right, so I'm gonna cheat and do 2 because that's fun. So I'm gonna do the first one. I'm gonna show is I think it is my favorite from the year, but and that's this card, which is the 1956 Topps Ernie Banks with the Let's Play 2 and the in-person autograph, which is just like this is just like a ridiculous card, right?
So cool.
And I had the fortune of being able to describe it and the whole story behind it on the Stacking Slabs Bin Smash podcast, which was mad fun to participate in. And, because obviously on that show, it's a lot of focus on like modern cards and things like that. So we got to get into like, what's the significance of Let's Play 2, talk about, the connection between Ernie Banks and his time in the Negro Leagues with Buck O'Neil and kind of learning to love the game there. So this really is my favorite card of the year because this is like, I saw it and I was like, this exists. Holy crap. I need to buy it. So that was one, but I spent a long time describing it. So my second favorite edition has been this one here, which is the 1909 to 1911 Colgan's Chips Hannes Wagner. And this one's fun because like it was like I wanted a portrait of Wagner. I wanted it, with the same style as the famous T206 card. But of course, like, I had been focused on the M116, which is an amazing card. And I just got priced out of it, man. It just like that card just shot up. Oh, Tony, give me some props for the Banks and the Wagner. Much appreciated, Tony. So Tony has basically the nicest M116 on the planet. I think it's an SGC4. It's ridiculously nice. That's an awesome card, but basically I had to like pivot. I had to like find a new path here. And what was cool was that like, I kind of went down a path of like learning about, oddball cards and, non-standard issues, and was able to, find this Wagner on Facebook for a pretty good deal. And it's been fun just to like learn about it. So this was like a gum candy product that was issued, same time frame as T206, 1909 to 1911. And I think it was produced out of Louisville, Kentucky. And and the little tins of like candy that each had a player. So there's a Cobb, which has the same image as the green portrait in T206. And there's many other Hall of Famers. So this was kind of a fun, I had no idea this card even existed, right? Until I kind of went down this path and had to kind of take a pivot. So yeah, that's been my favorite ad my second favorite ad of 2025 so far.
Matthew,
Cool.
that Wagner image looks vaguely familiar.
Yeah,
Have we seen that somewhere else before?
Yeah, so it is. Yeah, it's cool because, like, interestingly enough, for whatever reason, in the M116, they like they reflected the image. So he's like looking, instead of looking this direction, like, towards my right, he's looking towards my left in that image. But this one has the same orientation as the T206, which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
Also, notably, I think in the T206, the Pittsburgh is spelled without the H, which I think was the original spelling. But on this card, the Pittsburgh has the H, which I kind of find is a little bit odd. So yeah, that's kind of a funky, cool card. I wasn't expecting, but yeah, it looks cool. It looks really fun. Yeah,
Pretty
so
cool
that's,
to have that image, that classic image of Honus Wagner in the PC, even in that little circular card. Very, very cool.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah. Matthew, what
Okay,
year was that
yeah.
issued?
It was 1909 to 1911. Same range as T206.
Same. Okay, cool. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's really
same
neat
exact
too.
range.
Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, that's super cool. And I love the pivot. Like you kind of decided quickly and found it and did it. And I think it's neat to have a card that's like kind of so different, in your collection to represent Wagner. So I like everything about that. And I also want to give a shout out to your Stacking Slabs podcast where you talked about that Banks. I really enjoyed that episode and definitely recommend it to folks. I thought you guys had a great conversation, and it's really neat what a cool and perfect fit for your collection that card is.
Yeah, thanks, Nate. Appreciate that. So we got a cool comment here. We're gonna put that one back up. That was a really nice comment from Pre-War Dream. Says Colgan, Chip Wagner, King Kelly, and a Hank rookie. Rough Cuts is on fire. Gorgeous pickups. It's a super nice comment. Yeah, thank you very much. All right, so maybe we transition now. Yeah, go ahead.
It worked out well. I was just going to say it worked out well that we kind of covered three different sort of eras in vintage with our favorite pickups so far, right? You got golden era, pre-war, and 19th century. Covered some ground there.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah, that's great, man. I cannot wait to see that Aaron when we go to Chicago, dude. I bet you're gonna have a lot of people. A lot of people in the chat are gonna be looking to see that Wagner or see that Aaron. Very cool. All right, so then let's transition to the main, the bread and butter tonight, the meat part of the sandwich, which is a discussion of the overall, like, where are we in the kind of eye appeal movement, and where do concepts like own appeal fit into it, and kind of how are we processing this? So maybe Jonathan, would you mind leading us off on this convo?
Oh wow, I'm gonna have to start out slow. I've got a lot of things to say about it. I'll start out this way. I think when I first met you two gentlemen, we were a few collectors on Instagram who couldn't afford to buy PSA 7s and 8s of the classic cards. So we would go out hunting PSA 1s, 2s, and 3s, and you started to find other collectors who were kind of up to the same thing you were. And it wasn't a movement. It was just trying to buy the best one you could afford, right? In particular, I remember when I posted my 52 Tops mantle. It was a countdown I did before the Atlantic City National. And Matthew, you were like, dude, I can't, like, whoa, like, I want to talk about it, right? And you guys invited me into a chat, and it felt, back then it just felt like, well, obviously if, among us kids, if we can't be dropping, 600 grand on a baseball card, this is kind of a way to do it. And I love collecting that way. I still do love collecting that way. But somehow between then and now, it feels like it's turned into a movement. One of our hobby buddies once started a chat. He called it the Eye Appeal Mafia, and he invited us all into it. And I'll say this: I don't want to be the Eye Appeal Mafia, and I don't want hobby buddies when they post a card to apologize for their card. And I've started to notice that somebody who say like, check it out, I just got a Wilt Chamberlain rookie. I know it's not perfectly centered, and I know the reg is like they're apologizing for the card, but like I thought it was pretty good for the price, and that bums me out. It bums me out that most of the cards out there, that people now, because of the movement, might feel like they need to apologize for their flaws. And so I'm in this messy middle zone when I think about the eye appeal movement, where I love to collect that way, and some people associate me with it. And there are things about it that I think have been kind of warped by egos and even market forces that make me want to lean out hard.
Yeah, that's super well said, Jonathan. I think that it has been kind of shocking to see just how expensive some of the really high eye appeal examples are. And as you said, like it kind of originated not from like a, hey, I'm gonna figure out a way to game the market. Luke has a nice comment here. Never apologize for your card. Put that on a T-shirt. Yeah, I think
love
that's yeah that's a really great. That's a really great statement piece, right? But it wasn't my participation in eye appeal, started from the same as yours, Jonathan. It was like I've always just been trying to get the best bang for my buck. Like that's basically it. Like I want,
Right.
I'm kind of thinking about what's a reasonable amount of money to spend on the card. And I just want like the best card I can get. And I decided that, I can set like the technical grade on the side and try to assess, my personal opinions about what I think the card looks like and use that to guide my decision making. And certainly in the intervening time, it's turned into like, if there's a high eye appeal example, there's like a pretty big chase for it, and like the price can get pretty high. So then it starts to break the whole reason I got into it, which is to like
Right.
good bang for your buck, right? And so yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good phrasing. I don't know, what do you think, Nate?
Yeah, I agree with that. It's kind of born out of a desire to exploit an inefficiency, I think, which
Mhm.
is we have these grading standards that were created that, I think for a long time and to a large degree have dictated pricing. And the grading standards were not constructed to reflect eye appeal. They were constructed to reflect a set of technical grading guidelines, um, that tell us what a grade is, but it doesn't tell us how good the card looks. And so, for those of us who sort of reject that approach to determining value and want to determine it more with how we feel like the card looks, we've been, I think, really excited to be able to get what we think are often better looking cards at a tiny fraction of the price of, that the higher
Yeah.
grade stuff. And so, I think that's kind of what it's all sort of comes from. Right, Jonathan, I think you're starting to kind of go to, can it go too far, or can it feel exclusionary to some degree? I think that there's another element to it, which is, um, it's another way to, we always kind of chase scarcity as collectors, right? And on the vintage side, there are a few different ways that some cards, especially higher pop cards, can become rarer or scarcer, and a few of them are high grade, signed, or really high eye appeal and centered, right? Like those are kind of the three sort of things, at least that I can think of, that help. You look at the Hank Aaron that you just got, Jonathan, and there's, I don't know, I think probably 8 or 10,000 of those that have been graded, but of those, how many are centered and have the eye appeal that yours at, say it's 8,000, maybe 300 of those 8,000 look as good as yours. Maybe 300 have been signed, and maybe 300 are graded an 8 or higher, right? So there's kind of like different ways, and we sort of pick a lane that, not only helps us to kind of exploit an inefficiency and make our money go further than it otherwise would, but also in our minds kind of creates a sense of scarcity that in a way that we most relate to. Kind of some of my more initial thoughts about kind of how we've gotten to where we are, at least.
A couple reactions to comments that came in while you were talking. Our buddy JT mentioned, there was this play. We realized if we happen to have higher technical grade cards, you could sell them at their market value and downgrade. You could kind of upgrade eye appeal by downgrading the technical grade. Sometimes you could sell a card for 5,000 and buy it back for 3,000 and like your copy better. It's gotten
Yeah.
harder to do that because now the market value on those high eye appeal cards has just gone up. Other people are onto it. And then TJ is online mentioned maybe a difference when you were talking about the pop counts with pre-war. The number of examples out there is so much lower that the low supply kind of throws the high eye appeal game out the window in many cases. And I think that is certainly true.
Yeah, I wanted to jump in there really fast if I could, because I think there's a nice connection there between what TJ said and this concept that Dan's Vintage Baseball had brought up and is now in this comment from Pre-War Dreams, which says, in my opinion, I feel the own appeal or my appeal movement is allowing collectors to take back the hobby and use our judgment and acumen, and not the grading companies just dictating everything. And I think what I'm hearing there is, and what I'm showing on the screen is an example of a card that was high on my want list in 2025, which is the E90-1 American Caramel Cy Young. So this is this is a friggin' awesome card. Nate has an example of this one. I think this is my favorite Cy Young card, and so I got really fixated on chasing this card, and like high IAPL examples in like a 2 or a 3 were going like really high. Almost like $10,000 kind of high, which was like crazy to me. It is a pretty rare card. And then for me, I had to decide, like, actually, I just freaking want to own the card. Like, I would like the best example I can get, but it doesn't have to, I'm priced out of the very high IAPL low grade. And so like this one here, it's a 1 SGC 1. It's pretty nice. But the back, it was in a scrapbook. It kind of lost most of what was on the back. And this is my example of a own appeal card. Like, I'm really happy just to own it. It would be great if it was a higher eye appeal one, but for the money I had to spend on it, I thought this was a pretty good balance. And ultimately, that's kind of what I'm trying to do in the hobby I just want to spend my money wisely, right?
Yeah. And I love that. When you moved on that one, you figured out what mattered to you, not what mattered to getting some sticker on the back, or, it's not centered enough for your ego, right? But you didn't care about that. It's got gorgeous color. There are very few of them, and you love the card, and I love this own appeal movement. Although I wish it didn't have to have a name. I wish it could just be, obviously this is a hobby, right? This is a bunch of people. A lot of us grown men who are out there looking to buy collectibles that make us happy. What you shouldn't need permission to just go out and figure out what it is that you love and go find it. For me with the Hank Aaron, I passed on one that I think the Eye Appeal Mafia would approve of more highly, to buy one that was tilted, but that had color I loved, this rough cut that I loved. I love that it was in a PSA holder, not SGC, and I think SGC, the plastic gets scuffed a little easier. Whatever. It was the one that I wanted, and that's how people should collect.
Yeah. And just in going back to what you said earlier, like the idea of me posting that Cy Young onto Instagram and having to apologize for like why it's not centered very well, why there's back damage, like screw that, right? It's an awesome card. I'm happy to own it.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say, Nate?
No, I agree with that. And Jonathan, I think one of the points you were starting to hint at is something that I hear discussed sometimes, which is how subjective or how objective is eye appeal when we talk about it, right? We all talk about it in a way where it's, kind of a given. And, there are, my view is that it's largely objective. I think if you show, say 100 experienced vintage collectors a couple cards or a few cards, they're generally going to put them in the similar order in terms of eye appeal rank. But within that, there are definitely some subjectivities, and we all have things that we're most sensitive to, right? And the three of us have talked a ton. You guys know I can't stand any blemish on the face or head, primary focal point of a card. Like that's absolutely. But I don't mind if there's a crease like that's kind of hard to see, and but that some people won't have a card with a crease, or Matthew, I think you're even more maniacal about registration than I am. That's just kind of what hits your eye really hard. I remember your saga with your bad off Ty Cobb.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But it's
so,
also dynamical, right? It evolves. Like I was definitely
right.
in a position at one point where I didn't want any creases, and now I have tons of cards with creases.
Yep.
So it evolves, right?
Yeah. If I can think of a bunch of us collectors where one of us would almost always choose the perfectly centered one. Like I'm too OCD for anything off centered. Matthew's going to take the clearest image quality. I'm going to take the one where the color looks the most fluorescent, right? It just pops off the page and everybody has their own quirks.
Right. So, something else that I've heard kind of asked about this is and I think we've been, sort of hinting at it, and Jonathan, you in particular, has the eye appeal movement gone too far? Right? Like and I guess, to the extent that people are being made to feel, and that's a way that I hadn't necessarily thought about it, but kind of feeling like not great about posting a card because it doesn't look a certain way that's gonna garner a lot of positive feedback or whatever. In that regard, has it gone too far? I think when I think about it in terms of value, my answer would probably be no, because I still feel like a lot of 2s and 3s that look better than 6s are selling for a lot less than 6s. And so from that perspective, it still feels to me like there's a lot more of a ways to go with it, because I still fundamentally prefer the 2.5 that looks that's centered and registered than the 6 that's neither of those all day. Like that card should be worth more. It's come up so that it's close, but it hasn't gone too far, because why do we not prefer the better looking card regardless of what the grade says? Like a little bit of corner wear, who cares? So I'm still like of and about the eye appeal movement, and that it has more room in that regard. But Jonathan, you definitely give me some pause in terms of like the way that we talk about it. Like, are we making sure that there's still a lot of room for other ways to collect as well?
And when I think about the question, has it gone too far? I parse it into two columns for me: the market forces, and you kind of address that. And I kind of agree with you on the market side, which is the market's going to do what the market does. Our hobby buddy Matty C has started a company around this and made the point: hey, why shouldn't this gorgeous PSA 2 of a Babe Ruth Gaudy be worth 50% of the PSA 7, not 10%? Whatever. And I kind of say, sure, the market's going to do what the market's going to do. It's personally benefited my collection a little bit in the value. Some of the cards I bought have gone up in value, likely because they're high eye appeal cards. Now, I wish these market forces were a little softer, because I'm not going to sell those cards and I'm buying. So I wish the low grade, high eye appeal cards were a little more affordable, like they felt 2-3 years ago. But I think in terms of the market, I suspect it's on to something, and I don't doubt it. For my own personal take on the hobby, I feel like it's gone too far. And what I mean by that is I almost feel like there's some expectation. I'm a nobody in the hobby. I have 2,000 Instagram followers, but sometimes when I want to get a card, I'm like, nah, that's like, my hobby buddies will feel like I kind of shortchanged it. And like, that's, they know my standards. And I want to go to Chicago in a few weeks at the National. And if I see a card and I like it, I just want to buy it. Sometimes it'll speak to me because it's really centered. And sometimes I'll just like the guy I'm talking to and want to make a deal. And I do think there's just some expectations in our community that have gotten too high. And I see people on Instagram who I think have gone too deep. I see them cranking up the saturation and the contrast on all their photos to make it look high eye appeal, and having these super, super rigid buying standards. And for me, I have more fun interacting with people who kind of like all kinds of different cards in different conditions.
Yeah, it's well said. There's been a lot of really interesting comments in the chat that I want to highlight here. So one of them was here's his comment from TJ. It says, when I look at dealers' showcases with stickers that say high eye appeal, you know we're in trouble. And I think the comment there, it actually strikes home to me a lot too, because you know, some of it's definitely been co-opted where you go onto eBay or you go to a show and it, like, you know, it's dealers trying to leverage it to like get better prices, like even if the card doesn't warrant it. So it's like, oh, this is a high eye appeal example. It's like, well, is it really? Do you even know what you're talking about? So that part's been annoying, and I feel like for me, what was cool about the eye appeal buying high eye appeal cards before it became cool to do so was that like you were basically paying the market price for the grade, but you were getting this awesome example, and it was kind of like this, like, yeah, exactly. It was, as Nate said before, it was basically like what was the word that you used, Nate?
Inefficiency.
It was like an inefficiency in the market,
Yeah,
right? Where you're
right.
like kind of you got this like cool little move where you could like get these awesome cards for a great price. But now if you're paying like and now if it's like, oh, in order for me to like show off my card, I need to now just pay what I would have paid for the higher grade. Like that's not cool. That's not very fun. But I do agree with you, Nate, in principle that like, and you know, this is where Maddie C's like company comes into play. That like, it's still true that I would much rather have like the really beautiful 2.5 than the 6, even if the 2.5 is a lot more expensive than the other 2.5s, but it's not as expensive as the 6. Like that piece still makes sense to me. But
Right.
at the same time, like, yeah, the whole idea of like having some insano standards for the card that you want, and then just being able to just paying whatever it takes to get it. Like I've never been in that game. I've always been in the game of just like get the best card that you can for the money that you're willing to spend.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm still gonna do. It just maybe now means that my cards won't have as good of eye appeal as they used to have because I've just priced out of it, right?
Right.
But then and then in the chat, kind of in response to that comment, we got like so we got Dylan Double D Vintage Baseball Cards. He's got a great channel. You should check him out. He says the great looking cards in every grade will demand the highest premium. So the grade still does matter, and I think that that's right. It does still matter, and like thank God it does, because that allows a little bit of that inefficiency for me to exploit. But it's certainly true that it doesn't matter as much as it did even 3 years ago, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with all that. Yep.
I'll say I feel like now to be appropriately balanced and nuanced, I want to say some things in favor of the eye appeal movement. For me, the place I've enjoyed it the most is when I find the cards that are most important personally to me for whatever reason. I might love the art, I might love the player, and then just say, I'm going to go out and buy the most beautiful example of that card I can possibly find, and I don't care about the grade. One card that comes to mind for me was the 1950 Bowman Roy Campanella. It's not that popular a card in the hobby. It's the portrait card. It has really nice line work. And I just fell in love with the card, and I said, I'm going to hunt for one that I just think is absolutely perfect. Centered, beautiful registration, beautiful color, no compromises whatsoever. I happened to find it in an SGC 4.5. I want to say you'll see it on my Instagram page. I think it sold at Golden Auctions, and then I didn't check comps. I was gonna win it. I think I might have paid 3x the normal comps for the card, and I just love my example. And the point of that is sometimes going out in the eye appeal movement, so to speak, makes your hunt for a particular card really special. It prolongs it. It makes it personal. And then when you finally find the one, it feels so much more rewarding than if you took a quick path in the hobby. And so that's my favorite thing about the eye appeal movement is just that journey of figuring out what are those cards that matter a lot to you. Sometimes there's a card like the Eddie George I showed earlier. Eye appeal is not much of a thing for that one. I just wanted to find one. But when you find the cards that you want to hunt, and then having some friends in the hobby that help you along the way of like, hey, do you think this is it? Do you think that's the one? critique this card for me. That's what we do all the time for each other. And I love that about eye appeal. And that's why vintage card collecting is fun also, is because every single one is unique. And so you really have to think hard about which one you go for.
Yeah, that's well said, Jonathan. It's a great point. I'd mentioned before kind of the three ways to create sort of rarity around vintage collecting, with being signed, high grade, and really high eye appeal. And and what you're talking about on the high, all three of those create a chase, right? Like a vintage card from the 50s, if you're collecting a set in PSA 9, you're probably going to have to wait a while and like really work hard to try to get it. Or if you're collecting, you're doing a signed run of Willie Mays, his cards, that's going to be hard to do. Or if you're trying to find like really perfect, beautiful centered cards, all those kind of create a chase, because with vintage cards, especially post-war, you can go get one of pretty much any card when you want to. So
yep.
adding that difficulty element, and when you're doing it with eye appeal as opposed to those other two ways, it's by far the cheapest of the three ways to go after a card that feels really, really rare and really, really special.
100%.
Yeah, totally right. So also want to give a shout out here. We got some legends in the chat. We've got Orlando from A Collector's Dream, who's bouncing back health wise. So glad to see him in the chat sharing his thoughts. He says, "My opinion on a card is preferable versus the creator's opinion," and that's exactly right. That is kind of one of the key foundational elements of the eye appeal movement for sure. And then here's a fun comment from Pat. He says, "Sometimes imperfections give some cards character." And I think that is really well said too, because sometimes you see an example that maybe doesn't have like the traditional aspects of eye appeal, but there's just something about it that speaks to you, whether it's like the detail in the line work or the color contrast or these kinds of things, or it's a rough cut, right? Perfect example of like, hey, that's an imperfection that like says something about how the cards are manufactured in their era, and like that makes it in fact like more desirable and maybe a better fit for your collection. So lots of good thoughts that we're getting in the comments for sure.
I'm so glad, Pat, you made that comment, because it reminded me of maybe the last thing I wanted to share in this discussion was a hobby friend of mine, a wonderful guy. His name's Adam. His Instagram handle is Pictures of Cardboard. And for me, and all of us are buddies with him, he's actually the guy who jokingly called us the Eye Appeal Mafia. I'm not sure if there's a collector that I know, and Matthew likes him because he's a Cubs fan, but who really understands the beauty of the hobby and the beauty of the history for baseball card collecting like this guy. And he only collects like the absolute worst beaters of beater cards. And most of his cards, he does these beautiful reels of set collecting. I think a lot from the 1950s, early 1960s. He takes gorgeous photographs. The guy is an artist, and every one of his cards has crazy paper loss, creasing. I mean, it's over the top, and I really feel like he understands the beauty of baseball cards and what eye appeal is, on a level even above where I do. And that's the one that pushes it kind of pushes the argument, or pushes against the argument Nate made, that for the most part eye appeal is objective. We feel like we can kind of define it, but sometimes art gets involved and interpretation gets involved, and somebody like Pictures of Cardboard, just go to his Instagram and look at his work, and it's beautiful, and it kind of makes you think, it makes you realize you can collect in so many different ways.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, and I have the Schaefer, is one that might fit in his collection if it had a couple more. And I've got this Ed Walsh as well. It looks like it was maybe like soaked at some point. It beat all the hell, like way under. And mostly I like really high eye appeal cards, but I like to collect in different ways, and especially with a lot of these older cards, I love to have them raw. I love to have them in any condition. And I like to have a lot of them that, have a lot of character and, have been beat up. But mostly, Jonathan, kind of to your point about Adam, I think what I appreciate more than anything in terms of the collectors that I interact with is just genuine passion for the
Mhm.
hobby, for the sport, for the history. And Adam has that. A lot of people, our buddy Travis that only collects perfectly centered cards, and that's pretty much it. I mean, tremendous passion that I admire greatly, and
Yeah.
he in a lot of ways, like, collects in one way, but I don't think he judges people that don't collect like him. And I think his passion is very powerful and very genuine. And, he's a collector I admire greatly, as is Adam. Their collections can be more different, but the thing they share in common is extreme passion and, and a great way of showing their collections and a real commitment to the hobby. And ultimately, I think that's the primary guiding principle.
Well said.
Yeah. Well, very well said, Nate. We've also got a nice comment here from Mookie Chill, said another legend in the YouTube hobby game. He says, each of these cards have a heredity that includes a collecting precursor of mine. When you find the evidence of that heredity, it's gold. And that's so cool, right? It's all about like, one of the reasons we collect is like the connection to the game, the connection to the history, and like sometimes the imperfections in these cards, like the pinholes that Mookie famously collects, right? They're like, cards that were up on somebody's pegboard or whatever when they were growing up. Like, those are really cool stories. And here's another comment that I like, which I thought of when Nate showed his card. This one's from TJ is Online. Nothing is better in this hobby than touching and smelling old cards. It's like Mr. Miyagi pruning the bonsai tree. Yeah, when you hold up those two, like, I wish I was in the room with you so I could like feel and like smell the old cardboard, right, from a century ago.
100%.
That's really cool. That's really cool.
It's really pure. One of the purest things we can do in our hobby is to hold cards, and especially these old ones outside the plastic.
So true.
Awesome. All right. Anything else that you guys want to add to the eye appeal conversation? I think that was really fun. Yeah.
This was so fun. Loved all the engagement and the great points made by folks in the chat. Thanks to all our hobby buddies who tuned in and participated.
Yeah, it was mad fun. We got one last comment I want to highlight from Pat, who says, I love to collect Venezuelan tops because the flaws and imperfections are features and not bugs. And I think that's really well said. And actually, it was through some interactions I had with Pat that I got turned on to buying a 1964 Venezuelan that I actually bought from Adam, who was like, this card's like too good, too high eye appeal for me. And I ended up getting this 64 Venezuelan Ernie Banks, which is a super fun card. And that's another, cool like avenue in the hobby that, thinking about the heredity of the card and, coming from a completely separate country and that whole story. So yeah, that's mad fun.
Great point. Love the Bennies. They're cool.
Yeah. They're way cool. And Pat even sent me he sent me a Ron Santo, I think the 68, the one, or no, 62, the one that has the Spanish on the back. He just sent it to me. What a great guy. What an awesome hobby we have.
That's amazing.
Yeah, super duper cool. So yeah, it's been a really fun evening. I don't know, Jonathan, do you have any other closing thoughts you wanted to?
Yeah, I do. For the first time ever, ladies and gentlemen, we're keeping Rough Cuts under an hour. Let's go.
Look at that. Our YouTube ratings skyrocket.
That's right.
All right, Nate, do you have any parting comments?
No, I think that's it. I think we hit it well, wrapped up, and I hope we can indeed do another one in a few weeks before the National.
Yeah, that's going to be great. Can't wait to see you guys there. I got a wax box of cards that we're going to have some fun. We're going to have some fun with, and yeah, it's going to be a blast. And yeah, I want to give a big shout out to the chat tonight. Chat was on fire. Got some absolute hobby legends in there. Really making some really comments, kind of spurring the conversation along, adding some of their own thoughts. So that was mad fun. And yeah, hopefully we're back in a couple of weeks before we hit up the National.
All right. I'll see you guys then.
Take care, guys.
All right. Thanks, everybody. See you later.